I am here today to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Castlevania franchise. I'm super excited, and I wanted to wish Castlevania, even though Konami's not making any more Castlevania games, or at least as far as we know, or just pachinko games for whatever reason, we want to wish Castlevania a very happy 30th birthday. And to do so, I decided, what's the best way to do that? Well, I could do a review, but I've already done several, and I've got other plans for the Halloween special, so what better way to celebrate Castlevania than to talk about the top 5, or my personal top 5, most underrated Castlevania games ever. Now, I'm going to preface this list with the fact that it's a personal list, which means it's my personal opinion. If you disagree, I want to hear about it, or if you agree, I want to hear about it, so leave a comment below. So let's get started with the list.
Number 5.
Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance.
Suffering from middle child syndrome, Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance, released in between the now retconned launch title for the Game Boy Advance, Castlevania Circle of the Moon, and the first chapter of Soma Cruz's future world endeavors in Aria of Sorrow. This game tells the story of Juicy Belmont, or whatever, who grew up in the shadow of his grandfather, Simon Belmont. He teams up with his friend Maxim to rescue their friend, Lydie Erlinger. The plot takes place as an in-between storyline of the standard 100-year wait to defeat Dracula, and there's plenty of twists and turns throughout the adventure to keep players engaged. The controls are super tight and allow just whatever, to dash backwards and forwards, a welcome addition to the series. Your whip has a flail ability, a feature not seen in this capacity since Super Castlevania IV. Your sub-weapons can be paired with up to 5 holy magic books that will unlock more powerful sub-attacks. Plus, the game has multiple endings and a boss rush mode where you could play as Simon Belmont. Graphically, the game is a bit muddy at times, but despite there being a wide use of colors, and the music takes a bit of a hit in the title due to the arrangement, not necessarily the composition. Overall, a solid entry that few people mention in the Castlevania library.
Number 4.
This one's a tie. Castlevania 64 and Legacy of Darkness for the Nintendo 64.
Whoa, put down the pitchforks, people, and let me explain my opinion. Castlevania 64 and the director's cut version of the game, which was actually more of a prequel than anything, Legacy of Darkness, are sure to raise some eyebrows for being on this list, so let's get this out of the way. The game's camera is a mess. The controls are tricky to master, especially when it comes to the jumping mechanics on cliffs and ledges, where you have to hold the A button down so you don't fall as you pull yourself up. The music isn't up to par with the rest of the series and is much more moody and ambient. The attacking, particularly with the whip, was not accurate enough, but this was Castlevania's first foray into the realm of 3D, so I can excuse a lot of it. While it has not aged well, it still had impressive graphics on the Nintendo 64 for its time. You could choose from 2 characters, Reinhard Schneider, a descendant of the Belmont clan, or Carrie Fernandez, a descendant of Castlevania 3 alumni mage Sypha Belnades. In Legacy of Darkness, this is expanded for 2 additional choices, Cornell the Werewolf and a man named Henry Oldry. With the addition of these new characters comes new perspectives and tales that longtime Castlevania producer Koji Igarashi explains are side stories to the main timeline. While Legacy tends to be the more favored of the 2 for superior controls, the original game was still enjoyable in its own right, with intense difficulty, huge bosses, and vampires. Yes, you actually fight common vampires in this one. Why doesn't that happen throughout the other games in the series? Oh, also, skeletons on motorcycles. What's not to love?
Number 3.
And this one's also kind of a tie. Akumajo Dracula X68000 and Castlevania Chronicles.
A remake of the original Castlevania game, Akumajo Dracula X68000 was first released on the Sharp X68000 Japanese computer system. This game featured all new graphics and sound, as well as some new gameplay features. The jumping mechanics are much improved when compared with the stiff feel of the earlier NES titles. The music is comprised of remixed old tracks in addition to some newer ones. Depending on the type of sound modules you had with the Sharp X68000, you could experience the soundtrack in different ways, all of which were unique enough to sound different. Again, taking on the role of Simon Belmont as in the original title, you attempt to vanquish Dracula with the Holy Whip, the Vampire Killer. The re-release of this game, Castlevania Chronicles, offered the original version of the Sharp X68000 game, along with a remixed version that was enhanced graphically and musically. Unless you've got a pretty hefty chunk of change to purchase both the original and a Sharp X68000, I say go with the remixed version. It in itself is pretty pricey nowadays, so be on the hunt.
Number 2.
Castlevania Order of Ecclesia.
The Belmonts have vanished, and a new order of magicians have taken up the role of protecting the kingdom from Dracula. They're called the Order of Ecclesia. In it, a woman named Shanoa is chosen to take on a triple threat of magic attacks known as glyphs. However, before she can be infused with them, they are stolen during the ritual by Shanoa's fellow member of Ecclesia, Albus. As a result, Shanoa has lost what has made her human, her feelings and memories. She sets off on an adventure through many different atmospheric locations. It's a nice return to the outdoor environments after being stuck in castles since the legendary Symphony of the Night, complete with a fantastic soundtrack, gorgeous graphics, brutal difficulty, and tight controls. This was one of the last two-dimensional Castlevania games to release on the original timeline, and what a way to go out. What I love about this one is that you get to visit a village and go on side quests to help out the townspeople. This game just oozes character, and in my opinion, it's the best of the Nintendo DS titles.
Number 1.
Castlevania II Simon's Quest.
Released for the Nintendo Famicom Disk System in 1987, the game we received in the United States was a port to the Nintendo Entertainment System. The game was hugely inspirational to the later part of the series, particularly for the elements introduced here that would be brought back in Symphony of the Night and later Eggvania titles. A non-linear adventure, Simon's Quest had a tough time overcoming its major departure from the first and third titles, being the black sheep of the original trilogy on the Nintendo Entertainment System. I can't help but sing praises about this title though, as it was not only the first Castlevania game I played, but also the first one I ever beat. Similar to Metroid, the game gave the player tons of possibilities as to where to go and what to do. It was immersive, allowing the returning protagonist Simon Belmont to talk to townspeople who would give misguided and incorrect clues to throw you off your track. There was a level up system, you can get different powers, different abilities, and different items. And despite a lackluster final battle with Dracula, the journey itself involves Simon attempting to collect the 5 body parts of Dracula to resurrect him so you can kill him again. This time to end the curse that plagues the countryside. All thanks to that lovable scamp Dracula. With the day and night system introduced, monsters are tougher to defeat at night than in the day. This game also has multiple endings depending on how long it took you to beat the game. If you want a more in-depth look at this game, check out the review I did a few years ago.
Well guys, that's going to wrap up my top 5 most misunderstood Castlevania titles. But I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below down in the bottom and let me know what you think. If you agree, if you disagree, if you have your own top 5 list. Let's hear it. Alright, well, I'm going to go play some Castlevania. Why not? It's the 30th anniversary, right? See you guys later.